Hey guys, in this section we're going to create a project that implements all or most of the JavaScript knowledge that we've gained up to this point. So what I want to do is show you the finished product, and it uses JavaScript as well as jQuery. What it is, it's just a form. But it has these tabs that separates the form into sections. Now this is all these fields are part of the same form. We just have these tabs. So that's the jQuery, and we're going to use JavaScript to validate required fields, as well as validating the format of the email address. So you can see if we click Submit Form, it's telling us to fill in the required fields. So this is the project that we'll be doing in this section. So we're going to start out by creating our document structure. So I'm going to create a new folder, and this is chapter 2, section 8. And in this folder I want to create my index file. I want to create a CSS folder and a JavaScript folder. So let's open up the index. Of course, it's just a blank page. I'm going to open it in Notepad as well. Now I have some snippets that I'll be pasting in some code, and I'll be typing some code. So I'm going to paste in the document the HTML structure. Now I need to include jQuery. We're not going to use a CDN link. We're going to actually download jQuery and use it in our structure. So I'm going to go to jQuery.com, download, and we're going to use the latest jQuery 1, which is 1.10.2. So I'm going to copy all of this and go back to my folders, and in the JS folder I'm going to create a new document, and we're going to call that jQuery.js, and then we can go ahead and paste in all that code and save and close that out. Alright, so now we have the jQuery file in our structure, so we need to include it. So I'm going to get some script tags. I'm going to say script src, and that's going to point to the JS folder and the jQuery file. And that's going to be type equals text JavaScript, and that's it. So we want to put on a closing tag. So now we have jQuery included, so we can use it. I guess the next thing to do would be to set up the HTML of the form. So inside, I don't even have a closing body tag or an HTML tag. Now, to save time and the fact that we've already went over HTML, I'm actually just going to paste in the form from my snippets file. So I'm going to open that up. Alright, so we have the form, and I'll just explain it. Alright, so what we have is a form that has an event handler on submit. So when it's submitted, it's going to call the validate form function that we're going to create in our JavaScript file. So that's going to validate the form. And we have an unordered list, and we have title field pairs. So we have a list with the class of title, a list item with the class of title that'll have the caption on the tab, and then we'll have another list item with the class of fields that'll contain all the fields for that particular tab or title. So we have first name, middle, last name, and email for the Who Are You tab. And you'll notice we have an asterisk on the first name and the email because those are going to be required fields, and these also have a class of REQ. So all we have to do to make a field required is give it this class, and our JavaScript file will know what to do with that. Alright, so next we have who are you, which is where are you, which is location information, and we have 3 fields, and the state field is required. And finally we have the what do you do tab, which is just occupation, company location, and we can see that occupation is required. It has the asterisk and it has the class of REQ. So that's the form. So I'm going to save that and reload, and we have a very ugly looking form, but we're going to fix it up. So let's include our CSS file. So we'll say link rel is style sheet, and that's going to be in the CSS folder, and we're going to name it style.css. Okay, so let's do that now. Create a new file. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and open that, and I'm just going to paste the style in because we've already gone over CSS, and I'll talk about it real quick. Alright, so we have our body, which is going to be 500 pixels wide, and it's set to margin auto because we want it in the middle. Text align is going to be all centered, the tabs and the form fields. And then the list items will have no bullets. The list with the class of fields will have no margin and have a padding of 1 on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right. And then the list items with the class of title, we're going to change it to a pointer, the cursor to a pointer, so that when we hover over the title or the tab, we have a pointer. We're going to make the font weight bold. We're going to increase the font size, line height. The background will be light gray, and we're going to have a border on the bottom and the top. The top will have a white border just to show that little bit of separation in each tab, and then we'll have a bottom border which will be gray, and we have a class of hide that will hide whatever is given that class, so that's set to display none. So let's save that and take a look. So we have our titles and our fields. Obviously there's no animation yet, we haven't added any jQuery. We're going to do that now. So if we go to index.html, we're going to have a new JavaScript file. I'm going to copy this link to the jQuery JavaScript file, and this is going to be called animation because this is going to take care of the tab slide up and down animation. So if I save that, go back to our structure and create that file. Alright, so let's open that up. Alright, so we've went over how to prepare for jQuery. We have the document.ready, and then we create a function. So we're going to do that. Let's say jQuery document.ready, and inside here we're going to open up a function. Alright, so now we can put all our jQuery right here. So what I want to do first is I want to hide, I want these closed when we visit the page. I want these hidden except for the first tab. We want the first tab to be open. So we've done something similar to this in a past section. So what we're going to do is say jQuery, and we're going to grab all the list items with the class of fields. Alright, and we're going to filter. We've used this before, so we want to filter, and we're going to use a pseudo class. We're going to use the nth child, and we'll say n plus 4, and I explained this in the previous section. And then what we want to do is add a class. So this is all stuff we've done. We're going to add the class of hide, which in our CSS file it just sets the display to none, so that should hide all those fields. So if we save that and reload, we now have our first tab open and our next two closed. So we don't have anything happening here yet. We need to create a click event. So now we want to say jQuery, and we're going to say UL. So the unordered list. Okay, so we're not going to use .click. We're going to use .on, which is what jQuery really uses when we use .click. And all we have to do is say .on and then click. Now we could put in mouse down, mouse up, any kind of event we can put in here. So we're going to say on click. Now we need to put here what we're specifying that we want to click on, and that's going to be the title. So it's going to be any list item with the class of title, and then the last parameter is going to be a function, and this is what we want to happen when a list item with the class of title is clicked on. So whenever we click on any of these, and what we want to do is we're going to say this, because we're talking about the element that we're dealing with, which is the li.title, and we're going to do a little bit of chaining here. We're going to say next. Now what we mean by next is the next element. So the li.title, which is the tab, the next element would be the li.fields, and that's what we want to slide down. So we're going to say next dot slide down, and this slide down effect, we can give it a speed. We can say fast, slow. We've actually did this in the past section, and we're going to use 200, which is a good speed. And then we're going to say dot siblings, which will be the li.fields. So all the other li.fields are going to slide up. So slide up, and we'll give that a speed of 200 as well. Okay, so pretty simple, just a few lines of code. Let's save that and reload, and nothing's happening. So let's take a look at the console. Alright, so object has no method slide down. Oh, I forgot to capitalize the D. It's case sensitive, so let's reload that, and now it's working fine. We have no errors in the console. Alright, so that's the animation part of it. The next thing we need to do is our form validation. If we submit now, of course it doesn't do anything. We're not using any kind of server-side language. It's not going to do anything anyway except validate. It's not going to actually submit to a server-side file or anything like that. So that's it for the animation. So I want to copy this, and we're going to include the validation file. And we'll create that. Whoop. Don't want a folder, we want a file. So let's open that up. So what we have in our HTML is when we submit the form, we're calling an event handler that's going to the validate form function. So that's what we need to create. And we've studied functions already, so we'll say function validate form. And let's see, what we want to do first is we want to find all of the fields that have the class of REQ, because we want to check the required fields first. So we do that with a loop, and we're going to use a for loop, nothing we haven't seen before. And we're going to set a variable of I to 0, and we're going to say as long as I is less than my form dot elements dot length, and then we're going to simply increment that. Now each time this goes around, we first want to check for any elements that have the class of REQ. So we got to say if my form dot elements I, so we're going to go through each element, dot class name is equal to REQ, and my form dot elements I dot value dot length is equal to 0. Let's see. So what we're saying in this statement here, I'm sorry, we don't have the curly braces. So what we're saying is we're iterating through each field in the form, and we're saying if that field in the current iteration has a class name of REQ and that field has a length, the value has a length of 0. So that means if there's nothing typed in the field. So it has to have the class name and it has to have a value, a length of 0 in order for this to run. And what we're going to do here is simply alert a message. So we're going to say alert please fill in all required fields. And we don't want the form to be submitted. So what we want to do is return false, and that'll stop it from actually being submitted. So the user will just get an alert. So that's all we have to do for the required fields. So let's save that. Let's reload, and if we submit, we get please fill in all required fields. If I fill in one field, it's still going to do it. So we have to go through and make sure all required fields. And of course it's not submitting anywhere, but it was returning true and there was no alert message. So that's pretty simple form validation. You can get more intricate. You could highlight the fields that are missing, but in this case we have these tabs, so that's really kind of pointless because they'd have to go through each tab anyway. So that's just really simple required validation. The next thing we want to do is make sure that this email field has an actual email address and not just anything. So we're going to stay in this function, this validate form function, and we want to make sure we're out of the for loop, and we want to create a variable called email, and we're going to grab the email field by its ID, which is email. So we do that with the document.getElementById function, and the ID we're looking for is email. and we want the value, so we're going to say dot value. So it's not only pointing to the field, it's pointing to whatever is typed in that field. And the next thing we want to do is, let's create a new variable called @POS for @position, and we want to say email, so that's this variable pointing to the value of the email field. We're going to say dot index of, and we want an @ sign. Okay, so what that's doing is checking to make sure that there is an @ sign inside the value. Let's create another variable called dot position, and that's going to be email dot last index of. So this is going to make sure that the dot is coming after the @ sign. So let's see, it's dot. Alright, so now what we want to say is we want to create an if statement, and we want to say if @pos is less than 1, or dot pos is less than @pos plus 2, or dot pos plus 2 is greater than or equal to x dot length. So this is a very simple way of doing it. You could also use regular expressions, and there's a couple different methods, but this is just a real simple one. So if it's not a valid email address, we just want to send an alert, just like we did with the required fields. And then we want to return false, so we don't want the form to be sent if the email address isn't valid. So let's save that and reload this, and of course if we don't have the required fields, we're going to get this message. So let's fill in all the required fields, but I'm not going to have a valid email address. So if we submit that, we need to type a valid email address. So if we go to the email, and this could be anything, and then the @ sign, and then something dot something. Okay, so now it submits. So that's it for our form. We've used jQuery to do the animations and JavaScript to do the validations. So that's it for this chapter. In the next chapter, we'll be looking at XML, JSON, and AJAX.